The USA Today coaches poll came out today, which means we are just weeks from college football. We got so much to talk about on tonight's episode of Locked On Sooners Live. Thank you for joining us.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners Live. Thank you for joining us. We are free and available on all podcast platforms. Subscribe to the show on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every potential new hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here's Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday on the KREF Sports app. My apologies there. But Josh, we've got so much to dig into tonight on the live show. We're glad you're here with us in the comment section. Make sure you drop your questions throughout the show. We'll star them, we'll flag them, and come back to them a little bit later down the line. But off the top, we've got the USA Today Sports Coaches Poll, and the Oklahoma Sooners coming at number 19.
And technically, you can still listen to KREF on 94.7 through August 18th. But in case anybody missed the announcement today, obviously, that is that partnership, due to a leadership change, is shortly going by the wayside. And we at the Ref will hope that you will continue to listen to the home of Sooner fans by supporting us, by downloading the app. It's free. You can listen to us worldwide. KREF programming, the lineup, none of that is changing. So hope that everybody, like you support me and John right here on Locked On Sooners, will continue to support myself and really, larger than myself, the team for the home of Sooner fans over at the Ref. But yes, for a little bit longer.
Sorry, let me just get this shameless plug out there for you guys. It's a great lineup from Toby Rowland, bright and early first thing in the morning, to you and Chris Plank, in the later drive time, Parker Thune and Mike Steely midday. Like Mike Steely, before I ever got to be on his show, he was by far my favorite Oklahoma City Metro sports talk guy. He's just so good. Really enjoyed listening to him in the morning. And then the afternoons, obviously with Teddy Lehman and with Tyler McComas, it's just a great lineup from start to finish. So make sure you guys you have that app downloaded so you won't miss any coverage, because it's about to be football season and you want to have it all covered. I'm not employed by the Ref, but I am a part of the Ref Army. So go listen and download the Ref app. But USA Today Sports Coaches Poll, number 19, surprising to you at all?
No, I think it's about right for Oklahoma, coming off, of course, what was 6-7 a season ago. And yet there's optimism because of what you have in terms of the quarterback, Dillon Gabriel. It sort of blew me away, and probably a lot of people away, John, when Jeff Levy the other day at Oklahoma Media Day said Dillon Gabriel this season, if things go according to plan and he's healthy and all is good and right in the world, Dillon Gabriel is going to be a top 10 passer all time in college football history. So it starts there, obviously, for Oklahoma offensively. Danny Stutzman returning as the Big 12's leading tackler. So there's a couple of key leaders, both offensively and defensively, that you could look at and say, talented quarterback, proven production at quarterback, talented linebacker, and on and on and on. There's reasons to look at this, and I look at it and say Oklahoma's one of the 25 best teams in America going in, based on the way last year played out, in particular, defensive shortcomings that Oklahoma had, wanting to see more there. Okay, I get that you're not necessarily saying, okay, this is a top 5 Oklahoma team for me right now, or a top 10 team, or a top 15 team going in. So number 19, I think just about right. And for most people, again, I'm projecting Kansas State, Oklahoma as the Big 12 championship game. But I think, probably most people would say Texas, Kansas State, Oklahoma in that order. And that's how it played out in the initial coaches poll.
Yeah, I feel like it's fair. It's a little bit actually higher than where I ranked them in my preseason power rankings over at Sooners Wire. I had Oklahoma at 21. And I know Mikey called a hater a little bit, but I just feel like it's one of those. I want to see it. I want to see them prove it. Daniel Alanese in the YouTube chat says it. That's why we play the game, Boomer. Sooner, you got to see him perform, and you got to see him prove it on the football field. I also, knocked Texas. I was a little bit, lower on Texas than the coaches poll too. I had them at 15. The coaches poll put them at 10, or sorry, at 12. So I'm just kind of like, I want to see these teams prove it. But I do think that, this is a reflection of, one, a respect for the University of Oklahoma, and two, it's a respect for Brent Venables and what he is as a college football coach. Now, yeah, he has not had the accomplishments as a head coach, but he's had them all as a defensive coordinator. You can't accomplish more than what he's accomplished as a defensive coordinator. So there's a lot of respect there, and a belief that last season, like much of Oklahoma Sooner Nation believes, that was a bit of an aberration, and we're not going to see that again coming up this year, that this team is going to be a lot better moving forward. And so I think it's about right. I would have not been surprised if they were as high as like 17 or as low as 25 or even unranked. I wouldn't have been surprised just based on 6 and 7 and a historically bad defense. But I mean, again, there's a lot of optimism, and there's a lot of good reason for optimism, because as you laid out, you got Dylan Gabriel back, you got Danny Stutzman back, and you've added a ton of really incredible pieces along the defense that I think are going to make that a significantly better unit this season.
For some reason, I think it's because they used the TCU logo and then wrote out Texas Christian. Mentally, my brain hasn't recognized that TCU was 16 in this poll. So like all day long, Texas was ranked 1, K-State 2, Oklahoma 3, but now I'm recognizing that, no, that is not an accurate statement. Technically, TCU was 16 in this poll, and the second highest rated Big 12 team, which I'm a little bit surprised by that now that it's sinking in mentally for me, John, that TCU would be number 2 out of the Big 12 in the coaches poll.
Yeah, that one threw me off a little bit as well, but they had such a successful season last year when nobody really had much expectation for them. And, you're going to Chandler Morris at quarterback, who won the job a year ago out of fall camp, got injured in the first game, and then Max Duggan had this miraculous season. I mean, maybe they're just believers in Sonny Dykes and what he's able to do with that offense and that team. We'll see. I'm not really that high on TCU right now, but they can make a believer out of me if Chandler Morris just comes out and slings it around and really puts them on his back. But losing Quentin Johnson, losing Kendra Miller, losing Steve Avila, those are big losses and guys that were incredible leaders for this team. And I mean, they lost a lot of their edge and grit and determination. Any other surprises in the coaches poll that kind of stood out to you?
I don't know that there's any groundbreaking other surprises. I would just say, I mean, the Big 12 in general got a decent amount of respect in this thing, with Texas 12 and TCU 16, K-State 17, Oklahoma 19, Texas Tech 24. And then you get into the receiving votes category, and what you've got Baylor, you've got Oklahoma State's in there. I think Kansas got a vote, and maybe I'm missing BYU got a couple of votes. Houston got a couple of votes. So, there's a lot out there for the Big 12 in this thing. Just the overall top to bottom of it. I mean, clearly 2-time defending national champion. You are the champs, right? I mean, unless for some reason 90% of Georgia's roster decided, yeah, we're done playing football. It's easy to understand why the champs are the champs are the champs until, of course, the champs are no longer the champs. So I don't have a problem with Georgia at 1, even though, they're replacing obviously a good bit of production, replacing the quarterback. I think they've, as the 2-time champion, earned the right to be ranked number 1 going in. Michigan at 2 is, all offseason it felt like, because you had J.J. McCarthy coming back, because you get the return of hopefully a healthy Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, just what Michigan is, makes sense that this kind of feels like two times, speaking of 2 times, back-to-back Big Ten champion in Michigan. Haven't cracked that college football playoff victory code, but they've been there now in back-to-back seasons. And it's like, okay, well, something we talked about, the last couple of years, that you've got key figures at the quarterback position that will be new faces. Here you go. That's the case for Georgia. That's obviously the case at Ohio State. And So that opens the door here for Michigan to potentially go win this thing. So they're at number 2. Bama all the way back at 3 is surprisingly low, right? For
Such a
Alabama
drop.
standards.
They're sleeping on Bama.
So they're kind of like way back based on their standards. And then LSU at 5, I think, is kind of an interesting number.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I think that's again, respect for Brian Kelly, a respect for their defense and what they're able to do. And Jaden Daniels, I mean, he did have a really strong season last year. Didn't really turn the ball over much, was productive with both his arms or his arm and his legs. I guess both arms. He used both arms, I'm sure, at some point. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of a surprising one to me. The other one was Clemson, way back at 9. Now I know, the Unga Lelele, experiment didn't really work out for them. They went to Cade Klubnik, and the expectation is that's going to be a better quarterbacking situation for him this year. So what's the deal with the drop? I don't know, but maybe it's people are a little bit higher on Florida State, and for good reason. Jordan Travis is going to be really, really good. That connection between him and Johnny Wilson is going to have us remembering the Johnny Manziel to Mike Evans 1-2 punch that Texas A&M had a decade ago. So it's a fascinating poll, and the polls matter to an extent, but you have to go prove it. You got to go show who you are on the field. But I do think there's a healthy level of respect for the Big 12 getting 5 teams in the top 25. The SEC only had 6. Now they had 4 teams in the top 10 and the Big 12 didn't have any. But again, 5 teams in the top 25. I think that goes to show that there's a lot of depth in this conference still. And, the conference champion could very well not make the college football playoff because it might not get through a season with less than 2 losses. Now we hope Oklahoma is able to do that. We think the schedule lines up for them very well, but man, there's a lot of room to move up for the Sooners on this one.
Just in closing, at least for now on the USA Today Sports AFCA coaches poll, a little bit of a mouthful there. The year Oklahoma went 1 at all in 2000, I saw a lot of people drawing this comparison. I think OU was 19 in the AP, though. I saw people say, "Oh, it was 19, it was 20." I know it was 20 in the coaches poll going in. So, whether or not they were in fact identically 19 in the AP poll as compared to the coaches poll, this go around going in, we know that it's in that neighborhood, right? It's like, hey, Oklahoma's in that similar range to when they went and won the thing in 2000. And look, this is not Josh Helmer hopping on Locked On Sooners tonight saying, John, that OU is going to go win a national championship. But the most recent time they did, they were, kind of in this ballpark. So
I can see Sooner Nation out there with the map and the pegs, the thumbtacks, and the strings, just putting it all together and just trying to figure out a way to correlate it all. But hey, stranger things have happened. Again, nobody probably expected Oklahoma to go win the national title back in 2000, and they did it. So anything can happen. You get hot, you get on a run, you figure some things out, which we'll talk about here in a second as we talk a little bit about fall camp and what Oklahoma needs to figure out over the next few weeks before they open the season with Arkansas State. First, though, let's talk to you about our friends over at LinkedIn. LinkedIn helps you to find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. You get to post your job for free over at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn number 1 for hiring. Go post your job. Use the purple hashtag hiring friend to add it to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. They've got simple tools like screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Again, LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. The first thing we got to touch on when we talk fall camp is there was a little bit of a note that Gavin Sawchuk was missing practice during the media. He was missing in action during the media portion of practice. But turns out that he was absent for that period of practice. Sounds like he was just getting some hydration, some IV fluids, but was available for the rest of practice, Josh.
Yeah, no, that's good news. I saw our man Josh Calloway's tweet, which sent myself and others live on the air into, well, wait a second. I mean, this could be anything from he has personal matters going on to he's sick to who, I don't know. I mean, the worst possible outcomes, which is injury, whatever. But obviously, we got the good news, and that is massive news for Oklahoma because Sawchuk, I was talking about it this morning before even this little note kind of started making its waves out there, John, that to me, Sawchuk is such an obvious candidate for potentially one of Oklahoma's top breakout guys this season. We saw that breakaway track star speed in the Cheez-It Bowl. He and Javante Barnes, I think, are a natural 1-2 punch in the backfield for Oklahoma that will make, old-time fans, recent fans of Samaje Perine, Joe Mixon of yesteryear, very, very happy, right? This could be a 1-2 duo that, reminds folks of just that for Oklahoma. So good news there.
Yeah, I mean, they've got great running back depth, but you don't want it tested in fall camp. You want to have that depth strong, ready to roll as the season goes along. And if you suffer an injury sometime during the season, then yeah, you can rely upon that depth. But fall camp is not the place you want to test that depth. As we're finding out at tight end, I mean, it's still a bit of a struggle out there to get enough bodies to play the position. I mean, Austin Stogner's out there making plays, but it's still limited with Jason Llewellyn and Caden Helms. Blake Smith, I think, has had some limitations as well, but they expect him to be back at some point. But I mean, there's going to be some question marks at tight end as they roll into the season. But Josh, what are some of the things that you feel like they need to figure out over the next, I think, what is it now? 21 practices that they've got left?
21, 20, 19, whatever the number may be.
I haven't kept track of Brent Venables' countdown yet.
It was 2 out of 24 when we ended Friday. So whatever number, I know we've gotten one more in the book since then. Yeah. So whatever number that gets us to now, but a lot. I mean, obviously they got a lot to sort out, which is, I mean, I think football, you always start from the line of scrimmage back on both sides of the football. So for Oklahoma, based on kind of what we heard in Sooner Media Day, probably you got to sort out the left guard position, right? Seems like left tackle, got a pretty good idea that's Walter Rouse, left guard. Okay, Savion Byrd and this name or that name, Andrew Rame at center, McCade Metallier at least going in, according to Jeff Levy, seemed to have the leg up there, and then Guyton on the right side. So what does left guard look like? Does McCade Metallier stay as your starting right guard? So offensive line, got to sort that out. And then, obviously the skill guys, wide receiver, who's going to go make plays. And it sounds like as we, on what do we have to sort out 2023, August 7th, our year, Lord, our in this year from our Lord and Savior. Offensively, the questions initially you got to sort out just that side of the football, John. I think you say, okay, offensive line, how's it shaping out? Left guard, and then skill guys, which it sounds like we've gotten some good buzz on Brennan Thompson already.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of good buzz on him. He just seems like a real straightforward, down to earth, wants to go to work kind of a guy. Yeah, Kenny's mentioned it. Savion Byrd has been practicing with the first team. That's what you see. All the clips that come out with the offensive line, he's there at left guard. And I think that's probably what you need. You need somebody with his physicality and his just strength to kind of help lead your offensive line unit, provide some of that nasty, that grit that we've talked about a couple different times on the show. But I think that's a really good spot. It sounds like there's a lot of buzz also with Jaren Kanak, a guy that is looking to potentially start at linebacker for you. You need him to step up. You need somebody in that linebacker core to really step up, add some speed, add some athleticism to the linebacker group. Because, yeah, you got Danny Stutzman. He's a really good player, but you need more than that. You need a really two deep between your Mike, your Will, and your Cheetah. You need to be able to roll 6 guys in and out of the lineup and not suffer significant drop-off. So it's really nice to hear the buzz that Jaren Kanak is starting to show out. Because there's been a lot of talk about like Connor Neer coming in and competing for snaps, and that's fine. You don't mind having a solid floor with a transfer portal guy, but you want your young guys, your recruits, the guys that signed to play for your program as out of high school. Those are the guys that you want taking over these starting jobs, and it looks like Kanak's going to have a chance to do that. Again, we got to figure that out. Also at cornerback with Gentry Williams, can he kind of hold on to the buzz that he's created this offseason and hold on to that job. Because again, speed, athleticism, physicality, a little bit of an edge, that's going to translate to the defensive side of the ball. You need a whole group of those guys that play with a chip on their shoulder, want to get nasty, want to get physical. If you want to see this defense improve to top 50, top 40, top 25, and help them be a legit, Big 12 title contender.
Just one more thought on Savion Byrd before jumping in on some of the defensive discussion there, John. I don't have, without the side-by-side in front of me, it's tough for me to totally do the, again, comparison to last year to this year for Savion Byrd, but I can definitely say this. Again, the memory, not totally all there on how I felt about Savion Byrd last year to this year, just physically, but man, just the videos that say a Sooner Scoop is putting out there, or OU Insider and Sooners Illustrated. I mean, everybody, right, has got video component now. Anywhere you look, and everybody's doing a great job. John Hoover Media and all Sooners, everybody. But Savion Byrd looks like an absolute freak right now. So relative to where he was last year, I don't know that I can make a great comparison in that regard. I can just tell you that in terms of falling head over heels for one piece of video that's out there, John, on somebody going and hitting a bag or doing this or that drill, Savion Byrd right now looks, if he didn't already look that way, which he probably did, but right now, I mean, he looks so good, man. Just watching him go through the drills, he looks physically like he's ready to go be a starting guard for Oklahoma if called upon.
And again, it's one of the guys that you signed that's a Bill Bedenbaugh guy out of high school that is coming in now taking a job. And again, you love to see the development happening, right? That's the thing we talk about with Bill Bedenbaugh all the time, is the developmental aspect of him. When he signs 3 stars, 4 stars, and you're expecting them to be starters and 5 stars, that's what you're hoping for, is Bill Bedenbaugh to channel that excellent developmental gift that he has. Well, now you're starting to see that with Savion Byrd, right? A guy that didn't play a whole lot last year, got the start in the Cheez-It Bowl, was a great way to get his feet wet, a great way to get that first college football experience against a really good Florida State defensive line. And, it wasn't perfect. It was up and down, but it gave him some film to build upon. It gave him some reps to work with that as he goes into the offseason, he knows what he's got to do to get better. And that's a great thing. So now we get to see the fruit of that labor where, it's practice time, it's, the off-season work, it's the film room. Now potentially see that take hold, and you're not relying on a bunch of transfers because, right now, 3 of your 5 starting offensive linemen are transfer guys. Tyler Guyton transferred in, a year ago. McCade Mattire the same, and then Walter Rouse this past offseason. Only Andrew Rain and Savion Byrd are homegrown products, quote unquote. Tyler Guyton, I want to say he's more of a homegrown product because he was pretty raw coming to Oklahoma. But yeah, you got to build that thing with guys that you sign. It's nice to have a transfer portal addition that you can put in there here and there. But again, seeing Savion Byrd take the reins there, I think it just helps to provide a bit of foreshadowing to what it's going to look like here in the future when it's Jake Taylor and Jacob Sexton and Nate Anderson and Caden Green and, maybe some 2024 guys, stepping into starting roles down the line. I don't think they want to be transfer portal dependent. I think eventually they want this thing built from their freshman classes up and their recruiting classes through the ranks. So it's good to see that starting to kind of play out. It's good to have the floor of a Caleb Schaefer or a Troy Everett out of App State. It's good to have those floors that give you experience, but what you want to see is what you're seeing with Savion Byrd.
So is it cool if I break script here and just hit a couple of comments and react out of the live chat? Dominique earlier was curious. Hey, are you guys live? Are you pre-recorded? What's going on? Yes, this is Locked On Sooners live, and every Monday at 9:00 or shortly thereafter, we will be live right here. So I know you're down there on the cruise somewhere south of Haiti. I hope that the cruise is going well. Hope you're having fun, Dominique, and appreciate
flexing on us, just flexing.
I know, just flexing on everybody that, hey, I'm on, right. On a cruise right now. And then I know you put this up there a second ago, but this is just pretty good stuff from Jimmy. Hey, love the show. But John, I agree with almost everything you say, but I disagree with you about Oklahoma's defense. Top 25, baby. Watch out for it.
Man, I hope so. I really, really do. It would be an incredible jump to go from 122 ranked to 25. Hey, and listen, if it happens, I'll be more than happy to sit here and eat crow on that. I think it's unlikely. I think it's reasonable and realistic to maybe expect a top 75, top 50. But man, I would be thrilled if it's top 25. I think they've got the potential for it. I really do. And I think they got the schedule for it even. I think the schedule lines up in such a way that, I mean, the numbers could bear out to where they're a top 25 scoring defense this year. And man, if they are, this team's going to be a college football playoff contender if that's the case.
Toby Rowland had Kansas State. I don't know. I forget where. Toby Rowland, by the way, does his top 25 rollout every year where it's the T-Row top 25. He ranks all 25 of his top 25. And anyways, wherever he was at in the rankings today, 16, 17 of thereabouts, right? That neighborhood, whatever it was Kansas State is who he ranked. And anyways, he had Stan Weber on, who is the color commentator on the Kansas State radio network. And, one of the comments Stan made was, you look at this thing for Oklahoma, and he kind of just preaching what you, I, and a bunch of other people have looked at this and observed. Outside of Texas, and maybe even Texas, depending on how things play out, depending on how you feel about Texas going in, and then obviously, again, how things shape up. But Stan said the schedule is so favorable for OU that it just looks like Oklahoma can start stringing wins if Oklahoma's good, right? If there's some legitimate improvement. And so I know that we're sort of still in that final stage of the talking season, but there's somebody else on the outside that, frankly, probably doesn't have the rosiest of feelings for the University of Oklahoma, given K-State and, OU's relationship with the Big 12. And yet that's somebody that could at least be objective about the thing, John, and look at it and say, yeah, this is manageable for Oklahoma because there is no K-State. There is no Tech. There is no Baylor.
Yeah, it's so wild and really quite beautiful and gracious of the Big 12 to set the schedule up in such a way for the Oklahoma Sooners. Now they just got to go win football games. Any other kind of camp thoughts that you've been hearing buzz on that we got to touch on?
Yeah, I wanted to jump back to linebackers. You mentioned Jaren Kanak, and speaking of folks that you see the sprinklings of videotape out there from everyone, Jaren Kanak just looks like an absolute monster. The way that he's going through workouts, seems very, very comfortable with what he's doing. And the reports that other folks have had out there is that basically Kanak right now is running twos, right there with or right after Stutzman. So he's right toward the front of the line. Take from that what you will early on from one Jaren Kanak. So I would say that lends itself toward, okay, maybe that is, like we thought, the name to watch right there alongside Danny Stutzman with the Deshaun McCullough.
It'll be fascinating to see how that linebacker thing rolls out. But again, it's like I said earlier, you got to have 6 guys that you feel really good about. And matchup to matchup, I mean, it could be, Jaren Kanak and Danny Stutzman starting alongside each other. One matchup, it could be Kobe McKenzie and Danny Stutzman. If you want more size and bulk, I'm thinking of like a Baylor or a BYU game where you might want more physicality, more size up the middle, then you might go with those 2 guys where in a bigger role. Whereas maybe against, Cincinnati or West Virginia, when you need more athleticism and speed to help contain the quarterback run game, you might go more Jaren Kanak, more Kip Lewis, maybe in those rotational roles. So it'll be fascinating to see how they play this all out, but I'm expecting them to play 6 linebackers. If you're counting Cheetah as a linebacker, I'm expecting them to go 2 deep and not play their guys, their starters 900 snaps this year. It's just, that's not going to happen. All right. So we're going to turn the table here. We're going to talk realignment. I know Oklahoma is not really being affected directly by realignment this cycle, but man, there's so much going on. I feel like it behooves us to touch on it a little bit because eventually it could ultimately affect Oklahoma at some point down the road, with the SEC potentially adding more teams to just the conference as a whole. But just, Josh, what are your overall impressions of realignment as it is? What coaches are saying about realignment? Who's to blame for realignment? I mean, there's so many directions to go here, but just initial impressions of what's happened over the last few weeks.
I don't know how you could have any college football show or platform and not talk about realignment to some degree. And okay, so in the present, this, maybe doesn't affect Oklahoma radically, right? Unless, all of a sudden this puts a little fire at the feet of the SEC to go be additive again. And we'll see what Clemson or Florida State or everybody in the ACC winds up doing. I know there's a lot of different smoke to dissect right there, but if I can I, and this is, if you missed it, I won't go on quite the tangent that I did this morning hosting the radio program. If you missed it, kref.com, you can just search the podcast page. You can listen to the whole thing. But for me, okay, in the present, it doesn't, directly affect Oklahoma a bunch, again, unless the SEC goes and is additive again and so on and so forth, or whatever happens with the Big Ten and the SEC. But in the past, it affected Oklahoma, and Oklahoma was a chief factor in all of this. When you think back to June of 2010, I mean, John, I was consuming all sorts of content this weekend, whether it was Andy Staples and his new On 3 show, which I think is great, by the way, on YouTube. I wasn't, I've read Andy Staples' work over the years, but for whatever reason, now that he's on YouTube, I guess it's because I'm editing this show or commenting. I see a lot of his work now. And anyways, stumbled upon that, and it was great. His breakdown of, June 2010, this thing, Larry Scott had the idea, John. He had the idea of a super conference and was going to bring Oklahoma, Texas, and he almost stinking did it. He had a done deal, and then the Longhorn Network came in and tail spun the whole thing out of control. And then you fast forward about 1 year later, and he almost got Texas and Oklahoma again. And Larry Scott famously said, we could have expanded if we wanted to. And so I just, in the present, without getting too long-winded here, was thinking a lot about that, just how close it was for Oklahoma to having been in the Pac-12, or what would have been the Pac-10 then and turning into the Pac-16. Would a Michigan and an Ohio State have jumped over? Could you have convinced somebody else, right? I mean, the whole world, the whole landscape of college athletics is different, and yet now instead it plays out the opposite way, to where a Big 12 conference that people were ready to dance on the graves year after year after year after year, even after Oklahoma and Texas shuffle away, it's going to survive, and the Pac-12's dead. It's just nuts.
Yeah, you think Larry Scott would like a do-over on that, not getting hung up on Texas Tech and Oklahoma State being part of the expansion package? Probably. And who knows what the college football landscape would look like now if Oklahoma, Texas, Oklahoma State, and Texas Tech were playing out west. I mean, it would create a whole different dynamic for what college football looks like. But man, it's been wild to kind of just watch it all transpire. And, it looked like, at times the Pac-12 would be able to scratch together a media rights agreement that would hold at least, the remaining 8 together after USC and UCLA go to the Big Ten. But it just seemed like the further they pushed that off, the worse the opportunity in media rights was going to get. And it just never got better to the point where, Colorado said, we're not waiting anymore. And Arizona followed suit. And then after that, it was, you don't really have much option. If you're Utah, Arizona State, Oregon, and Washington, Oregon and Washington, they took cut rate deals to go to the Big Ten. Now that deal is still significant, and it's still a good chunk of money and better than what they were probably going to do in the Pac-12. But they had to make a move to survive and stay a part of the national conversation. Now, those are two really strong brands that would have landed anywhere and been really good options. The Big Ten is just the one that made the most sense and ended up, being able to capitalize on that and add some West Coast partners for USC and UCLA. The Big 12, adding Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado. Yeah, it may not be a flashy bunch of teams, but Utah, I mean, that's the 2-time defending Pac-12 champ. The team that knocked off USC twice last year. I mean, they're a great fit, I think, for what Big 12 football is going to be all about. Toughness, hard-nosed, really good offenses as well. And then in addition to that, you get to bring back the Holy War, the rivalry game between BYU and Utah. And yeah, it may not be the Red River Showdown. And I mean, I'll say it's probably on the same level as Bedlam, if not maybe a little bit more significant, but maybe doesn't have the history. But I'm sure I'll get people in the comments, ripping me for that. But you get a in-state rivalry that has traction, has history, has venom, has a lot of this. These schools do not like each other. BYU kind of blames Utah for not getting their seat at the Pac-12 table, years and years and years ago. And so there's a lot that goes on with that one, and it's a great addition for the Big 12. And I think, man, Brett Yormark, he's done so many good things in his short tenure as the commissioner of the Big 12. And that's part of the reason they're going to survive. Not only is he expanding the football conference, the football brand, by adding, Colorado, by adding, yes, we hate Orange, period, by adding Utah and Arizona State, but he's leaning into the conference's established dominance as a basketball brand. He's looking to build that up to the point where it's maybe on the same level in the national eye as maybe the ACC. The Big 12 puts out as good a basketball product as anybody. But when you think of college basketball, what do you think of? You think of the ACC. You think of Duke, North Carolina. You think of Maryland, or Maryland's now the Big 10, but they used to be ACC. So you want to build that basketball brand to where it's on that same level. And people are thinking of when they think college basketball, they think Big 12, not just locally, not just regionally, but across the country. And him leaning into that by adding, Arizona, which with a great basketball history, Utah, that's a solid basketball program for years. They've been a really solid program, not an elite program, but a solid one. And then Arizona State can have their moments up and down. So you expand your basketball brand at the same time. And then just one final thought, the idea that the ACC is looking at adding Cal and Stanford, to me, is the most ridiculous and laughable thought that I've ever seen in conference realignment. As bad as the ACC media rights deal is, this decision would be worse. Yes, you get two football teams on the West Coast. You get that West Coast media outlets and time schedules and things like that. But man, that kills your programs. That's so much investment financially in getting your teams back and forth across the country. And then people have been making the point about the the
Olympic sports.
Yeah, the Olympic sports. Thank you. And how much travel they're going to have to do in the Big 10. This is worse. This is way worse than what the Big 10 is going to have to accomplish. So like having a team like Miami have to travel to play Stanford, like that's ridiculous. The ACC just needs to go away and go the way of the Pac-12 and just die off. Sorry.
Cal and Stanford to the ACC is just, it's just nuts. And, for me, I wonder, is this just the ACC posturing for an opportunity to basically get back to the negotiation table? It's like, well, wait a second, we added these two. And so is there some reimagining of the contract that you can do with Clemson or Florida State because you add those two?
Which I think that's a great idea. If you can get back to the table and like do a new deal that doesn't have you tied in until 2034, then that's what they have to do. But I feel like they'd be better served by adding teams more regionally located, an Appalachian State or, a South Florida. Like those teams I feel like would make just as much sense as adding Cal and Stanford. Again, not big brands, not, West Coast media partners, but you're not having to create these big travel logistics by adding App State and University of South Florida. Again, they're not going to be on the same level as Cal and Stanford, but I mean, as far as sports brands outside of football, yeah, Cal and Stanford are really good outside of football, but in football, basketball, women's basketball is great. Women's basketball is fantastic, but elsewhere, Cal and Stanford don't really move the needle in a lot of ways. So it's a weird idea, but it does kind of make sense. We'll see how it all transpires if it's just a ploy to get back to the negotiating table.
What do you, in probably closing on this and then back to some Oklahoma camp stuff and where the Sooners sit in terms of the preseason rankings, and College Sports Wire had some thoughts on top Sooners going into the year. What do you make of the Apple deal? So I've seen people dunking all over it, calling it the worst thing of all time. I don't think that it was the worst deal of all time, but obviously it wasn't a good enough deal to get the deal done. And to me, the biggest issue with this Apple deal that was presented out there, which in case you missed it, I'm looking at Stuart Mandel's report from a couple of days ago via The Athletic. And I think we've given this its paywall time. I think that there's enough people out there that have shared this that I don't feel guilty passing it along to you. Apple offered members a 5-year deal with an annual base rate of $23 million per school, which, oh, by the way, as that heat started to rise, a counteroffer lifted it to $25 million as its base. Now, that's not great. That's 6.7 less than the average that Big 12 schools are going to get reportedly paid out. The catch here is at 1.7 million subscribers, the per school payout would have matched the Big 12. And all of a sudden, if somehow you think grandiose with me, baby, you could get to 5 million subscribers, schools would have eclipsed $50 million per year, which again, as those SEC and Big 10 deals keep growing, yeah, I mean, that sounds good or competitive right now, but in long run, it really wouldn't have been altogether that competitive, but it would have been better, right, than what, the Big 12 or the ACC is getting this and that. Most people have said, like, unrealistic. You weren't going to get that type of subscribers. And look what the NFL Sunday ticket package gets, but there's other ways to consume NFL football. You have regional television markets in the National Football League. So a lot of people are like, okay, I get enough of my NFL fix. I'm not saying you're getting 5 million subscribers. I don't think you would have gotten that, but I could see where maybe they would have had several million subscribers, and yet this thing has just gotten dunked on left and right as the worst deal of all time. Probably the piece that it was missing is some component of an ESPN, a Fox, a CBS, an NBC. If you had that to go with it, where you had, a couple of primetime games mixed in, maybe it would have worked. But and that's, I guess, my long ranging, here's my thoughts on the Apple TV deal. Wasn't the worst deal of all time, but obviously wasn't the best deal of all time.
Yeah, I just think that most of the college football watching country isn't streaming college football. They might, there are a lot of people that stream. I mean, we don't have cable in our house. We use YouTube TV for, watching the NFL, college football throughout the football season and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, streaming is still so new that, I mean, this would have been a really great opportunity for Apple to expand their product. But I think the concern probably was, okay, are we going to be on enough televisions to make that matter? Are we going to be on enough televisions for, recruits, because as much as we don't want, recruiting to be a part of the media rights packages, but it kind of is. If your team is on national television more, kids that you're recruiting get to see your team. And if your team is playing and you're trying to recruit a guy in Florida, his mom and dad want to be able to watch him play on Saturday. And if it's, if Apple TV is the only way to make that happen, then you're going to have to get Apple TV to watch your kid. I mean, yeah, it creates an opportunity, but I mean, you got to get that subscription. And yes, for most people, maybe the Apple subscription is not that expensive, but for some people it is. They're not willing to drop, 10, 15, I can't remember how much it is for an Apple subscription. But yeah, so it is interesting. Like, there's the potential was there, the opportunity was there. I just think because it's still so new that having that be your primary distributor for your football games was probably like a bridge too far for some of the older athletic directors and presidents. Maybe if it was I could really see a Brett Yormark going to Apple and saying, hey, look, we're not going to give you our primary stuff, but we'll give you our secondary and tertiary rights to stream. Maybe they move from like ESPN Plus at some point to Apple TV for, secondary, get your not your Oklahoma, but your Oklahoma State softball on Apple Plus at some point, because Brett Yormark is an innovative guy and he's just looking for business opportunities that's going to help his conference make money. Thinking outside the box, this could be a potential option for them or for other conferences down the road to explore. But again, because it's so new, the idea of just having that as your primary, sorry, I'm having a brain fart.
Broadcasting partner, media.
Yeah, it just doesn't, I don't think ADs and presidents were comfortable with that yet.
And I think you nailed it in the sense that for most people, right? Myself, look, I'll pay for everything. I'm a sucker, right? Because I want to consume every piece of college content, but I'm probably not the target demographic for who conference commissioners are really trying to reel in, right? They want to get me and then everybody else, and everybody else probably isn't willing to shell out, 7, 8, 10, whatever extra dollars per month, even though probably any cable or Hulu deal or YouTube deal, you're paying that. You know what I mean? It's just all about how you think or you don't think that you're paying it. It's the one extra thing. It's Apple TV not being bundled with all of those other entities that probably scares people off a little bit. And, when you're not a part of one of those traditional modes of broadcasting transmission, yeah, it's going to freak people out if it's not one of the Olympic sports, right? Basically, if it's not anything that's not sort of lower tier men's basketball or women's basketball or football. So I don't know, just very, very interesting.
Yeah, just kind of one final note on this, and it's similar to the DirecTV thing, that there are a number of people that consume college football, NFL football, that live in rural areas that high-speed internet's just not available to yet. Just in the last couple of years, my father and mother-in-law got fiber cable out there just because the one of the local co-ops was starting to lay it all out in their rural area. I mean, they live on a dirt road, and it just took this last 2-3 years before they finally got fiber. But that's not the case for most rural areas. And in Oklahoma in particular, there's a ton of rural area. Now, you might think, okay, California, it's big city, there's internet everywhere. But Northern California, there's a lot of rural area, real estate. Oregon, Washington, same thing. Arizona, I just drove through Arizona, and I about saw as much desert as I want to see for the rest of my life driving through Arizona. And so, I mean, there are going to be places that, streaming football is just not going to be palatable because the connection just won't be good enough. And so that is definitely a consideration that everybody has to take into account. Now, as we kind of move further down the technological age and everybody's got fiber optic cable, internet, and able to stream a little bit easier, then, okay, having a primary streaming platform as your primary distributor, that can make sense. But for now, it's just a little too soon.
I like this.
Sorry, BMG baby. I gotta apologize, man. It was BMG baby, one of our loyal listeners, followers here on the show. He said, "Yo, how did my home state of Arizona catch a stray, bro? It is very." Now, I didn't see. I will say this: Flagstaff was amazing. Flagstaff was beautiful. That was our favorite place on our 13-day journey. Flagstaff was fantastic. If you're ever out Arizona way, go to Flagstaff. We didn't get to see the Grand Canyon. We didn't get to see Phoenix or Tucson or Tahoe. We drove through the New Mexico way. So that's why you caught a stray, because we went New Mexico into Arizona up to Vegas, and there's a lot of desert out there.
New Mexico's I love the Southwest is just awesome. Arizona,
it's cool.
New Mexico,
it's cool, all of it. But if you live out here in eastern Oklahoma where I'm at, and it's rolling hills and trees as far as the eye can see, and then you get out there and it's Joshua tree and cactus, it reminds me of where I grew up in California. But man, that was so long ago. I forgot just like how desolate it gets out there in the desert.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get to the more mountainous areas out there, and it's really, really super pretty. Or Phoenix is just awesome in general. But we could talk realignment. I'm looking at a story here from Clutch Points, college football. Why Oklahoma, Texas to blame for Big 10, Big 12 moves. That's its own further discussion we can have at some point. But
how about why is the media to blame for all these realignment moves? No media members are writing that one.
You think the media members are? I mean, obviously Fox and ESPN, et cetera, are.
I mean, CBS Sports, ESPN, I mean, they have a hand in all this too, as the primary distributors for SEC football and the Big Ten. And I mean, they've all got a hand in all this. And I was thinking about it earlier. I was just thinking, like, for all of the propaganda that's out there, man, nobody has been talking up the SEC, the Big Ten more. I mean, they put the SEC as like 1, the Big Ten is like 2, and then like way down below are everybody else, ACC, Pac-12, Big 12, as far as what conferences look like. And so if everybody thinks, okay, you got to get in the SEC, got to get in the Big Ten, that's going to make realignment happen. If the only way to compete with those schools and those conferences is to be on their level, the quickest way to be on their level is to be in their conference. So anyway.
Sure. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that all of it is connected, and of course, most of it is Scrooge McDuck jumping into a big bucket of coins, right?
Right.
I mean, they're taking a gold coin bath. I mean, that's the big part of all of it is the money side. Okay, before we get out of here, College Sports Wire, all Big 12 team, our man Mr. Patrick Kahn putting it together for us, and then a little bit of recruiting nuggets on the way out the door. 5 Oklahoma Sooners made College Sports Wire's preseason all Big 12 teams. And I guess what? Our man Patrick Kahn, colleague for John and I, he just ranked the top 25 players in the Big 12 going into this season.
Yeah, so he did both. He did the top 25 players. He also did, the all Big 12 teams as well. And yeah, you had 4 in the top 25, and then you had 5 players on the all Big 12 first and second team. 2 of them were first teamers, Javonte Barnes, Ethan Downs were Oklahoma's first team representatives. And then on the second team, you had Andrew Rame and Danny Stutzman and Dylan Gabriel. Austin Stogner. No Dylan Gabriel, no Jaleel Farouk, no Woody Washington. So,
yeah. What do you make of it? It's familiar names, right?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I don't know what to make of Austin Stogner yet. I think he's going to have a good season, but I don't know if he's going to be the second best tight end in the conference. I think Jatavian Sanders at Texas is far and above the best tight end in the conference, maybe in the nation behind Brock Bowers. He's number 2. I still feel pretty bullish on Dylan Gabriel as one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the conference. I think Danny Stutzman's going to, continue to ascend, and he's going to be a first teamer by the end of the season. Ethan Downs, he had a strong end of the year last year. We had like 7 tackles for loss in the final 3 games of the regular season, and then 2 sacks. So he was really, really looking good. But I'd like to see him put it together and build on that and earn himself a first team selection this year. So, kind of fascinating, but we'll see.
How about Javonte Barnes? This quote's pretty interesting. Just thinking about, I know he wasn't on these teams, but I'm reading a quote here. Quote, "That wasn't really me," end quote, talking about his freshman season. I kind of like that.
Okay. All right. I mean, I think most of us thought it was pretty good, but there were areas where both he and Eric Gray could be better, short yardage situations in particular. But man, if he thinks he can be better than that, sign me up. You know what? I love a running back and a wide receiver and a cornerback that talk like that, that talk with this, their chest out with all the utmost confidence. I mean, you got to be super confident to play those positions because so much is focused on you when the ball is given to you or going your way. You're out there on an island, so to speak, and you got to be able to produce. So yeah, give me all the Javonte Barnes hype. I'm buying stock. I think he's just got everything you want in a running back. He's big, he's physical, he's fast, he can catch the football. He's got good elusiveness, good agility, and he can break away from the pack.
TikTok and out of time. Any final questions from all of you in the chat? Feel free to fire those along for us. Recruiting notes. What do we need to pass along in the way there?
Well, one thing, we had USC lose a commitment to Oregon, so Oklahoma jumped ahead of them in the team recruiting rankings, so that's fun. As far as recruiting notes, we got the Josh Isosa commitment. We're still waiting on Grant Bricks. I think everybody still feels really positive. This time next week, we'll know where Williams Nwaneri is going to go. And I think everybody's ready to get that saga, done and over with. And then at the end of the month, David Stone. So nothing really new over the weekend, I don't think. You're going to see the Mizzou fans out there saying it's Missouri and Georgia. And, everybody's saying it's their school in Missouri. Well, it's Oklahoma. Oklahoma's in the thick of this. They're not going to not be in it. Even after he commits, if it's not to Oklahoma, they're going to still be pushing towards signing day, just like they did with Peyton Bowen last year. So don't sleep on Oklahoma, no matter how this goes. But I really still think it's going to be Oklahoma. We do have a couple questions from the chat, Josh, that let's touch on real quick. Keith McCollum, he asks, who do we see as the biggest surprise on defense?
Biggest surprise defensively. Do you have a name that just jumps out for you?
Yeah, I know we've hyped up R. Mason Thomas a little bit, so he may not really be much of a surprise. So I'm going to go with Grayson Halton. I really think that he's going to have, I mean, they're talking about Grayson Alton in the chat right now. I really do think he's going to have a breakout year where we're talking about 4 or 5 sacks from him this year, just because he's so quick. I do think Oklahoma's going to play with a lead more in 2023, and like not just a 3-point lead, but double-digit leads in a lot more games where they're going to be able to just get after the passer. And Grayson Halton just fits that to a T, man. He's bulked up, he's added size and strength, and that quickness and agility is still there. He's really, really, he's going to be a big-time difference maker for Oklahoma's defensive line.
I'm pretty high on Isaiah Coe. I feel like there's this thought at times from OU fans like, yeah, Isaiah Coe, he's okay. And I feel like he can, John, based on what we've seen in the past, I feel like he can crank it up one more notch and put together a really, really, really good season for Oklahoma. So, and I think that would qualify as a surprise for some people out there, some Oklahoma fans out there, that they're not really chalking up Isaiah Coe as somebody that's going to go have this great defensive tackle season for Oklahoma. I feel like that's in there for Coe. I feel like that's a possibility really for either he or Jordan Kelly, but I feel a little bit stronger for Isaiah Coe. Dejon Terry, I think has a chance to be surprising for Oklahoma. I'll continue to say Harrington's name just because, at this point it's got to qualify as a surprise, right? Because we've done this song and dance 2-3 times in a row. And yet it's kind of, I'm guilty of this too, that Dasan McCullough, we sort of said, okay, the cheat is his and away he goes. I could see Harrington seriously factoring in for Oklahoma. Anybody else in the secondary or edge guys for OU that could be surprising? Stripling. I'm not ready to write the obituary there on Stripling.
I mean, yeah, Marcus Stripling and Reggie Grimes both had really strong performances in the Alamo Bowl against Oregon. Backed that up with a really strong performance in the spring game in 2022. And then Reggie Grimes got off to a great start to start the 2022 season. And then, like a lot of the defense, just kind of, I don't know, he struggled. It's kind of the best way I can put it. Had a hard time generating pass rush. So, I mean, those guys could definitely emerge and be better players this year. It's year 2 for everybody in Brent Venables' system. Year 2 with Schmitty. Everybody should be stronger, faster, quicker, bigger. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, those are definitely 2 guys. And then Jonah Laula, like that's definitely a dude to keep an eye on. I mean, Todd Bates loves this guy. He's going to get every opportunity to play, and I think he'll be productive. He's, again, like Grayson Halton, he's a guy that is fast, he's quick, he's physical. He's going to be able to make a lot of plays from the interior as long as he can just kind of get used to the idea of playing in that phone booth, like Todd Bates mentioned after fall or after spring camp. Question here from Chad Littlefield. You know him as the Gunniest Stutzman Army on Twitter. He asks, who leads the team in tackles and who leads in sacks, Josh?
Well, Danny Stutzman will be leading the Oklahoma Sooners in tackles once again. I think he's got a great chance to lead the Big 12 in tackles once again. What about sacks? Do you have a leader there? I mean, seems like have we gotten a vote for Ethan Downs in the chat? I don't think we have yet.
No, and I think Ethan Downs will improve upon his sack total. I think he'll have probably 6 sacks this year, maybe 7. But give me R. Mason Thomas, man. There are few guys on this team that can get to the quarterback in less than 2 seconds, and he's one of those guys because he's so fast, he's so quick, he's just twitchy, and he's added strength, he's added weight. He's just, to me, he is the prototypical new age pass rusher, a guy that can stand up, he can get in the 3-point stance, and I mean just terrorize offensive tackles because of his athleticism and his quickness and his speed. So yeah, that's my guy. That's who I'm going with. I'm predicting like an 8 sack season to lead the team, and I think it's going to be R. Mason Thomas.
8? Can anybody sort of approach that near double figures mark? Because what was it, Downs and Grimes who led OU with 4.5 each last season? Yeah,
I think so. And yes, I know like that's a big jump for a guy like R. Mason Thomas, but man, the tools are just there. And I don't think they're going to be keeping him off the field as much. And like I said earlier, I think they're going to be in more, 10, 14 point lead situations to where these guys are going to be able to pin their ears back more and just get after the quarterback, And so I think they're going to have a lot more sacks as a team. I I see, Ronald Bothroyd getting mentioned as well. And I mean, he's a guy that could very well lead the team in sacks. He had 13 over his last 2 years at Wake Forest. So a very productive player. It's going to be hard for anybody on the defensive line to hit, double-digit sacks because everybody's going to be playing in a rotation. But R. Mason Thomas, that's the guy that I think has got the best opportunity.
Can I say PJ Adebawore in the mix? Is anybody
you can
ready?
Say it. I'm not going to believe it. I'm not buying it, but you can say it.
I'm not buying it either, but that'd be pretty exciting, right? If he finds himself anywhere close to being a legitimate playmaker and difference maker from day one, be pretty fun. Trace Ford, is gonna factor in as well. So will we have a defined number one? And I guess you're kind of leaning R. Mason Thomas, others maybe Bothroyd or whatever. I mean, you think that there will be that clear number one in the defensive end, edge rusher, pass rushing department? What about Deshaun McCole? Is there any chance that he could be that guy?
I mean, he should get pass rush snaps because he's just too good of an athlete and he's too quick. But I think it's going to be more on the blitz. I think it's going to be a dude that he's going to play everywhere, just like the Cheetah's supposed to. But I don't see him taking 90% of his snaps, rushing the passer. So I think it probably unlikely for him to lead the team in sacks. But hey, man, I'd love to be surprised on that front. I don't know if they'll have a clear-cut, defined, starting edge guys. I think it's probably going to be Ethan Downs and Ronald Bothroyd just because of their ability to both rush the passer and play the run. But I think there's going to be a lot of situational football played. And I think the way they deploy their defensive ends and defensive tackles will depend on situation, down and distance, opponent. But again, I think when it comes to 2nd and 12 and greater, 3rd and long, R. Mason Thomas is going to be on the football field a lot in those situations. And if he's not, we riot.
It's going to be fun to watch what year 2 has for R. Mason Thomas, who, if my memory here is serving me well, outside of Javonte Barnes and definitely defensively, he got the most snaps as a true freshman, which is nice little indicator that he's been trial by fire a little bit for OU and could be, just based on that experience, ready to make a big-time jump. Our man, Gunny and Stutzman Army, love him hanging out. He says PJ will be huge in a year or two. And then one final question, what do you say on the way out the door from Monty Cisco? Who leads OU in INTs?
Give me the man from Tulsa, G-Dub, Gentry Williams.
I thought you were about to take the man from down from Denton.
No, he'll get some, and he'll make a lot of plays in the football, but I don't think he's going to get enough snaps to lead the team in interceptions. Where I think Gentry Williams will play 600 snaps. Peyton Bowen will probably be more in the 300 range because of just the depth at safety is so good that, I mean, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll be so good that they can't keep him off the football field. But I think because of the depth at safety, that, Reggie Pearson, Key Lawrence, Billy Bowman are all going to get a lot of playing time. But I do think Gentry Williams will start at one of those cornerback spots. And I just think he's too good playing the football in the air.
Yeah, if you could tell me who was starting opposite Woody right now, that would be a good candidate, just because probably Woody at times is not going to get thrown on, we think, right? If Woody Washington's really good, so maybe that takes some of his opportunities away. But, I don't know. You tell me, should Woody Washington be a candidate in this conversation too? What about Harrington? We mentioned Harrington earlier. Again, if you could tell me that Harrington is going to be a big-time passing downs guy out there for Oklahoma in terms of his snap count, then maybe even that's a name that you tossed into the mix. McCullough. Is this guy just going to be everywhere for OU? Sacks, interceptions, a little bit of everything. Probably Gentry Williams is a good candidate though for you.
I want to see them run some double cheetah formations where they have, I don't know, two defensive tackles, 2 cheetahs, 2 linebackers, and what was that? 5 defensive backs. I don't know. That could be a lot of fun. So yeah, there's so many guys that I think they've added over the last couple of years. Dave the Cat making an appearance on the show tonight for the live folks. So many guys that they've added over the last couple of years that just want to play the football. They want to be aggressive playing the football in the air. And so that's a great question, Monty, that I can't wait to find out who leads this team in interceptions. And I mean, I think it's going to be more than just like the 2 or 3 that we've seen regularly from this team. I mean, you could see 5 leading the team in interceptions. So, man, a lot of good players that they've added. Those guys that were part of the 2022 and 2023 signing classes are going to be big time, producers in this defense as early as this season. And I think we're going to start to see, especially the 2022 guys, really take hold of the opportunities in front of them and start to define what this defense is going to look like under Brent Venables here and into the future. Well, Josh, another great live show is in the books. Thank you so much to everybody that participated, that joined the chat. Sorry we were a little bit late getting going. My little boy was having a hard time getting to sleep, so I was having a hard time getting the show prepped. But we appreciate y'all's patience for this as well. And always, always, always are so thankful to have you here and spending an hour with us on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Central Time here on Locked On Sooners. It's one of our favorite parts of the week because we get to interact more closely with you all for that time. So thank you so much for being a part of it. Again, be here next Monday night, 9 p.m. Central Time. We'll have the Williams-Nwaneri commitment to talk about, whichever way it goes, and what that means for the Oklahoma Sooners 2024 recruiting class. We'll have more camp nuggets to dive into over the next week as well. So again, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube, hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop, when we go live. And again, be subscribed to the show so you can be a part of the chat every Monday night. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef. Follow myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. We're also available on Facebook, Locked On Sooners Podcast. Can't wait to talk to you another time. Hug your friends, hug your family. Boomer Sooner.